All right, so again, welcome to Prescription Nature Pill, Getting Outdoors for Mental Health and Stress Reduction. So this is an agenda for today, so you can have a sense of what to expect from this webinar. So we're going to cover the science of being in nature. So what do I mean when I say nature pill, and what could be underneath some of the benefits of spending time in nature. We're going to do a couple of activities and experiential activities to prompt you to think a little bit more about your own relationship to nature and what might inform that. And what are some ways that you can practice utilizing your relationship to nature to benefit your own psychological health? We're going to talk about some additional applications that are specific to mindfulness practice, if mindfulness is something that you're interested in or maybe currently practicing, and then some additional considerations. So additional ways that your relationship to the natural world might influence what you think about, how you feel, or what your day-to-day life is like. And then, of course, at the end, there will be time for Q&A if you've got any questions. And I'll share some resources that might be helpful for you if you're interested in this topic. So a bit of a thought experiment. And an additional note, please put all questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat. That's just a bit easier for us. So a bit of a thought experiment for you. So on your own, take a second and consider this. What is a nature pill? What do you think about it? Is it real? Is it even a thing? Or is it something that you think maybe was made up, or is it real? So nature pills are a bit of a kind of jargony term for a growing movement to utilize nature as a psychological healthcare intervention. So there's a growing movement from doctors and other social service professionals to utilize nature and the benefits that it can provide. So doctors have been encouraging patients to go outside for millennia. So Hippocrates called walking man's best friend. In the Han Dynasty, physicians encouraged outdoor frolicking exercises to ward off aging or to maintain youthfulness. And until around the mid-1940s, people with tuberculosis were sent to mountain retreats to take in magic airs or to spend time in a natural space to seek wellness. And so a growing number of physicians are encouraging their patients to spend time outdoors to support their psychological or physical health. Some of the benefits of this perspective is that nature tends to be lower cost than many other interventions or medications. It's something that many of us can access frequently throughout the day or whenever it's convenient for us. And it doesn't have, or it doesn't require any kind of materials to create the intervention. So thinking about the processes that go into making medications or maybe making certain supplements, this is something that exists already, and we can take advantage of it as it is. This is an additional example of a movement towards incorporating time spent in nature as a health promoting intervention. So Park RX America, it's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to reduce the burden of chronic disease, increase health and happiness, and foster environmental stewardship by prescribing nature during the routine delivery of healthcare via healthcare professionals. And so I want to be super clear that I in no way perceive this as being a replacement for medication that's needed for folks. I'm certainly not saying that you should stop taking all your medications and just spend time outside. I certainly don't want that to be the interpretation of what I'm saying, but that spending time in nature can be additive to whatever healthcare kind of system or interventions you currently require to maintain good health. So let's dig into this a little bit. So what could be underneath Or what are some of the reasons behind recommending that individuals spend time in nature to enhance psychological health? So a bit of context for this conversation is, and something that I was always interested in as a student, is who's doing this research, whether you're interested maybe in doing this research for yourself or you just want to know where to look for some of this data. These are the folks that tend to do this research: environmental psychologists, social psychologists, anthropologists, or other professionals interested in human-nature interaction. So folks that study maybe sustainability behaviors, or folks that study medication monitoring, physical or psychological health. So psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists. Some terms to look out for are ecotherapy, environmental psychology, eco-psychology, nature therapy, forest bathing, among many other terms. So this is a growing field, which means that there are lots of different pockets of folks and professionals researching this and utilizing some of these interventions. So that means that often there isn't a clear consensus about what we're calling this yet. So you'll see lots of different kind of jargony terms surrounding who exactly is studying this and what exactly we're going to call it. So more research is needed in this area. So what is it about nature that's restorative for us? What are some of the benefits that we can experience from nature? The uniqueness of each individual's relationship to nature. But I'm going to talk about some general findings so far, which suggest that being in nature, even for really short periods of time, can have a positive effect on mental health. So I'm going to focus on mental or psychological health, but there are additional benefits potentially to physical health as well. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely encourage you to maybe go out on your own and do some of that research. So what research has found is that spending 20 to 30 minutes in nature can significantly decrease levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And so there's some research out there really illuminating how long-term exposure to cortisol can be damaging to our physical bodies and to how we feel day to day, so our psychological health. So interventions or practices that we can use that decrease that level of cortisol can be really beneficial for us long-term, from really zoomed in, how we feel in a given day or how we feel in a given hour, to zoomed way out, what is the trajectory of our health over our lifespan. And so time spent in nature might be protective of how we feel and our health, and maybe in particular for our organs and other parts of our body that tend to be negatively impacted by cortisol, or a high level of cortisol persistently. So Shinrin-yoku, which is a Japanese term that translates to forest bathing, has been shown to promote relaxation, feelings of safety, calm, and general well-being. So we're going to watch this video to give you a little bit more context and a bit of a sense of what forest bathing is and some of the benefits that can provide. So give me a second to get this going. We might see an ad because it's on YouTube, and I want to make sure that we've got captions. So hang tight for just a second.
My name is Dr. Qing Li. I'm a physician at the Nippon Medical School Hospital, and I'm the president of the Japanese Society of Forest Medicine. And I have studied the forest medicine at Shinrin-yoku for 30 years. Shinrin-yoku directly translates to the forest bathing. It is something spending time in forest to promote the good health. In fact, the Shinrin-yoku is originated in Japan in 1980s and as a national health program to help the stressed workers and to reduce their stress. Now, there are about 62 forest therapy bases across Japan, and those bases provide the service with the blood pressure check and some aromatherapy course, also some walk with the forest therapy guide, was together get some beneficial effect from the fourth Beijing. Have long and fascinating roots into nature, especially into forest. 2/3 of the Japan are covered in forests. There are two major religions in Japan, Shinto and Buddhism. Both religions see forest as the realm of the divine. We even have the word karoshi, which means death from overwork. So it made sense for people to turn to forest to help. There are many beneficial effects on human health. For example, 心理药 can reduce blood pressure. 心理药 can reduce the stress hormone and stress situation. 心理药 also can reduce the blood sugar levels. The 心理药 can lift the depression. The 心理药 can improve the quality of sleep. The 心理药 also can boost your immune system, including the increase of natural killer cells and the activity of natural killer cells. 心理药 also can increase the anti-cancer proteins. The 心理药 can also improve the concentration and increase your memory. Yeah. You can visit a city park to enjoy 心理药. In fact, in my research, 2 hours 心理药 in the city parks also can get many beneficial effects, like 心理药 can improve your positive feelings and reduce your negative feelings. In my personal experience, I always visit a small park near my office almost every day during the lunchtime. So if you have a small park near your home or near your office, you also can enjoy the city park during your lunchtime. You also can put some plants or flower in your home or in your office to enjoy the indoor forest therapy. You also can produce some aroma by using the essential oil to produce some smell and to enjoy the sense of the smell of the indoor forest bathing. In this book, I show you how to practice 心理药. I also show you lots of data on the benefits of 心理药. So if you want to find health and happiness, please read my book, 心理药.
All right, so there's a little bit more information about that book if you feel particularly interested in this topic. So you could hear throughout that video, he was alluding to spending time in nature. You could see that he was incorporating what looked like some movement exercises, so keeping his body active when he was in the forest. And also alluding to maybe what feels a little bit different, but some aromatherapy, including using all of his senses to really engage in that forest environment. So touching the trees or feeling the moss or smelling the leaves. I imagine that he could feel the temperature, maybe moisture in the air. So really engaging and being fully present in that forest environment. Some additional research about being in nature has shown that wilderness therapy, so taking therapy and utilizing it either in an individual or group setting, has been shown to decrease depression, improve psychosocial health, so improving interpersonal relationships or ability to relate in a healthy way with others, improving school performance or academic success, and decreasing substance abuse among adolescents in particular. Nature exposure has also been associated with increased cooperativeness, so some other social or interpersonal benefits potentially associated there. And time in nature has generally been associated with restorativeness and stress relief. So again, potentially reducing levels of cortisol, that stress hormone, potentially reducing blood pressure and restoring energy, or restoring perhaps attention, which we'll talk about in a moment. So when I think about, or when I review this research, and it's super interesting, and really encouraging that we all have access to this resource that tends to be pretty free, that we can just step outside and enjoy it. I'm always curious, why is that the case? Why is it that nature can be restorative or can be health promoting for us? And so these are some ideas about why that might be the case. What is the underlying mechanism beneath what the benefits are that we receive and why we receive those benefits? So one thing that could be happening is grounding. So this is something that is popping up a lot more on social media. Something that I see pretty frequently is these grounding exercises. And so one that's really common that folks here might have seen is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise prompts you to look and find 5 things in your environment that you can see, 4 things in your environment that you can touch, 3 things in your environment that you can maybe smell, 2 things that you can hear, and 1 thing that you can taste. So using all of your senses to really ground yourself in whatever environment that you're in. So utilizing grounding, so really intentionally orienting your senses to the environment that you're in, can reduce anxiety, panic, and association associated with trauma. And so this is something that is very common for college students, to feel anxiety, maybe to feel like they have anxiety or panic attacks. And so grounding yourself in the environment can be a good reminder to your body and your mind that you're safe right now, that there's nothing in your current environment that would be threatening to you, and that you can take a moment to allow your body and your mind to relax just by being present. So that could be part of the underlying mechanism here in time spent with nature, is that our senses are being stimulated by the natural environment in ways that can ground us. Attention restoration theory is another idea about what might be going on. And this is exactly what it sounds like. So this theory posits that when you spend time in nature, it helps to restore your capacity to maintain attention. So I'm sure that many of us can recall a time when maybe we were during a really busy point in the semester, or maybe something really stressful was happening in our personal life, and we felt so exhausted that it was really hard to maintain attention. It was hard to focus on things, maybe hard to focus on homework, or hard to focus on, making a meal, or hard to focus on having a conversation with someone. So really feeling like your mental or cognitive resources were drained, and it was tough to intentionally pay attention to something that can happen when we get stressed or overwhelmed. And so this attention restoration theory posits that spending time in nature can help give you back some of that cognitive capacity to pay attention to things in daily life and to utilize some cognitive energy to be productive, or to kind of exercise behaviors day to day that you need to survive or to be successful. And so going a little bit deeper into this theory suggests that there are 2 different kinds of attention. And I'm sure many of us can maybe recall times when we were using one or the other of these. So involuntary attention is something that is really just inherently interesting or intriguing to you. It's something that it feels effortless to pay attention to it. So maybe that's a song that you really like, or a movie that you really love, or a TV show, or maybe another person. Maybe you're on a date or something and you find that person really intriguing, where it feels effortless to keep your attention focused on that thing or that person. Compared to voluntary or directed attention, which is something that requires effort. This is something that requires cognitive energy, so mental energy and intentionality. And so this is something that might be more like doing homework, or completing work when you're on the job, or doing the dishes, or solving a puzzle or something that you have to maintain some focus and some intentionality to pay attention. And this can feel more effortful. It can feel more tiring or more draining to do this compared to involuntary attention, which feels easy. Something's just interesting to you. And so in this theory, nature is thought of as being more inherently interesting. There's a lot going on in the environment that we might want to pay attention to. There are things around us that are alive. So plants or animals, there are things around us that might be pretty to look at, or that might be kind of stimulating. So maybe looking at like a body of water that's moving and enjoying watching the way that maybe the way that a stream moves or a river moves, or seeing the way that maybe waves in the ocean move. It's something, anything that really kind of captures our attention. And there are a lot of things in nature that can really capture our attention. There are 4 facets, so 4 elements of nature in particular, that the Kaplans believe, so the founders of this theory, that they believe are part of what can make nature restorative or really inherently interesting. So fascination, so feeling like you're fascinated or feeling like you're in awe of something that you see in nature. So maybe you go to the Grand Canyon and you just are blown away. You just feel in awe of the magnitude of what you're seeing. Being away is the second facet. So feeling like you're outside of your everyday situation or removed from everyday worries. So you're outside of the office. You're in an environment that is novel for you. Or if you work outside, like maybe being outside isn't novel for you, you're in an environment that isn't associated with work. You're in a place where you can be there for relaxation or for enjoyment. The third facet is extension. So seeing how things in the natural environment connect. So really zooming out and seeing that environment as a bigger picture. So seeing how maybe the stream moves downhill and then flows into a pond or a lake. Seeing where the trees connect to the ground and maybe seeing some of the roots, kind of budding up from underneath the soil. Or seeing a squirrel, kind of scamper up a tree and learning about how different things in the environment are interacting with or are connected to each other. And the last facet is compatibility. So this is where each person's unique relationship to nature is going to come into play. So thinking about if there's a place that you like to be in particular, does that place meet your preferences? Do you like the mountains or do you like the beach? Or do you prefer the mountains that day, or do you prefer, I don't know, maybe the desert that day? Does it meet your preferences and your goals for where you want to be in that moment? And so being in a place that kind of meets all of these criteria and that feels really inherently interesting or intriguing to you can provide space to kind of reflect on what you're experiencing, to reflect on your environment, to reflect on yourself, maybe to reflect on your relationship or other things that are coming up in your life, and to receive some of that restorativeness that can make it so that you can go back into work or go back into daily life with a renewed sense of energy or a greater capacity to pay attention to things and be successful day to day. Another theory that could be underlying what makes being in nature so beneficial or restorative is stress reduction theory. And this is just what it sounds like, that being in nature reduces stress. So this theory was developed by Roger Ulrich. And his idea was that natural environments are especially helpful for reducing stress compared to urban environments. So being outside might be more rejuvenating than being in the middle of a city. Ulrich takes a very evolutionary perspective to this. So his idea is that over the millennia that humans have been evolving, humans have evolved in very close contact with nature. And so our bodies, our physiological systems, and our minds are very well suited to being in natural environments because that's where they've tended to be. That's where our ancestors were. And so just as it was a positively adaptive experience for humans in the past to be outside, that's just what they were used to. It can be positively adaptive for us as well because our minds and our bodies don't really change that quickly. So thinking about this, if our ancestors were constantly stressed out being outside, that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. They wouldn't be as successful. They wouldn't be able to be as healthy or as functional if the environment that they involved in was inherently stressful for them. And so it's one thing I think we can acknowledge, being face to face with a predator, or maybe struggling to gather resources to survive. Of course, that would be stressful. We can think of exceptions to this. But very generally speaking, humans evolved to feel pretty okay outside because that's what they were used to. And so in particular, our cardiovascular and endocrine systems, so what makes our bodies work really well and how we moderate stress, wouldn't have functioned very well for our ancestors if they were constantly activated, even in unthreatening natural settings. Another thing to keep in mind based on this theory is that nature might be lower in intensity than cities or urban environments. There's less going on perceptually, so our senses are less likely to be overwhelmed. There's, potentially less noise pollution. There's less air pollution. Maybe there are just fewer things in the environment to look at, or maybe there are fewer people. Maybe there aren't, vehicles that are moving around us, or vehicles that are moving really quickly or making a lot of noise. Maybe the lighting is different or more consistent, or maybe the sounds that we hear are more predictable or less unpredictable in nature when compared to cities. And so I think we could all imagine, maybe being outside, being on a trail in the forest somewhere, or on a beach, or in the desert, wherever you want to imagine, compared to being somewhere like downtown Austin, and just what that would be like for you in terms of your senses, what you're seeing, hearing, feeling. So everyone's relationship to and prior experiences to nature are so significant, so far discussing theories, sometimes it can feel like kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, and that we're zoomed way out. We're thinking about humans or people in general, and we're not thinking about individuals. So we're going to start zooming in a little bit to talk about your unique relationship to nature and how that might impact your experiences outside, or what specific benefits of being outside could look like for you. This is called the Connectedness to Nature scale, and this is used to measure an individual's feeling of connectedness to nature. And so I'm going to review some of these questions. I'm just going to read a few. I won't read all of them, but I would encourage you as I read these to think about how you would respond. If to each question you feel that you strongly disagree, maybe you feel neutral, maybe you agree, or maybe you strongly agree. So think about that as I read each question, where you think you would fall. The first question is that I often feel a sense of oneness with the natural world around me. Another question, I often feel disconnected from nature, so kind of the opposite. I often feel a kinship with animals and plants. I often feel part of the web of life. Like a tree can be part of a forest, I feel embedded within the broader natural world. I feel as though I belong to the earth as equally as it belongs to me. When I think of my life, I imagine myself to be part of a larger cyclical process of living. So these are some examples of questions that can elicit for you what your relationship to nature might be like and how connected or disconnected you feel from it. A different route that we can take to look at connection to nature is a more visual representation. So the inclusion of nature in self-scale is a series of circles. So they begin with the circles side by side, where one circle represents yourself and the other circle represents nature. Moving over one, you can see that the circle for self and the circle for nature have begun to overlap a little bit. And then over this series of 4 more, you can see that the circles begin to overlap more and more until the self circle, and the nature circle are completely overlapped, where you feel completely included in nature, where you do not feel separate from nature. So everyone take a moment and take a peek at this, or consider how I described it, and reflect on where you think you would fit. How much you feel that you and nature are included in each other, or connected, or are part of each other. Maybe the visual is tough, or maybe you loved the visual. But some additional things that can be helpful are to ask yourself some questions to get a sense of what your relationship to nature is like. And this can supplement, if you liked the circles, this can supplement. And if the circles were hard, this might make it easier to begin to get at your relationship to nature. So the questions are, in what ways do you encounter nature in your daily life? What memories do you have of being in nature? How do you feel when you're remembering those things? Were those positive experiences? Were some of them negative or frightening or uncertain? Maybe some were really meaningful or exciting. What do the natural spaces around you look, sound, and feel like? So what environment do you find yourself in? And what's your relationship to that specific environment? Do you discuss nature in your classes? Is nature an element of your coursework or your future career? Do you imagine yourself working in nature or working with nature in the future? What motivates you to do that? What might feel meaningful about that for you? How are you impacted by news about nature and wildlife? So for example, news about sustainable or non-sustainable energy resources, news about weather events or climate, news about natural disasters or man-made disasters like oil spills or things like Fukushima or Chernobyl. What's it like for you to know that those things happened, or to know that those things are ongoing? Does your heritage or your culture have ideas about nature or humans' relationships to nature? How does your culture understand the role of nature in humans' life? What about religious, spiritual, or a-religious or a-spiritual beliefs about nature and how nature might exist? How that might inform how we understand reality or our place in the world. So let's do some activities. The first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to see if I can turn up my volume a little bit, actually. I wonder if I can. Maybe not. So if we can't hear it very well, that's okay. I'll do my best to turn it up, but if we can't, take a peek at the image and think about being mindful to the image. So when I say that, what I mean is, see if you can just be present with what you see and hopefully with what you hear, but we'll just do our best on that. See what you can notice about what your senses are perceiving, what you're seeing, or what you're hearing. Notice what it brings up for you, if it brings up certain thoughts or certain feelings or certain memories. And just stay present with those in a very gentle, non-judgmental way. So there's no intent to think something specific or to feel something specific. You're really just noticing what comes up for you when I start playing this video. right. So something as simple as putting on a video like this, or looking at images of natural spaces that you find interesting or beautiful, or listening to nature sounds. These sorts of things can be really restorative. It can help break up your day. It can help reduce stress or make you feel more relaxed. For many folks, listening to maybe nature sounds, or the sound of rain, or the sound of wind or thunder can help when they're trying to fall asleep. So I encourage folks to think about how they might want to incorporate this into their life, whether that's being outside, or maybe you just, pull a video up on your computer when you're studying and listen to some sounds of rain or something in the background to help you stay relaxed, or to help you be more present. So the next activity we're going to do is called a guided imagery activity. So what this is going to entail, let's see, how do I get back here? Whoops, I think I lost us a little bit. Here we go. So what this is going to entail is I'll read a script for a guided imagery exercise. And so guided imagery is a really helpful way to help your body and your mind relax. So if you feel that you struggle with stress or with anxiety, moving through one of these exercises can help your body and your mind relax. This is something that you can read on your own. It's something that you could have a friend or a family member read out loud to you, or you could go online and find videos or sound files of guided imagery exercises. So for a few moments, allow yourself to take several nice, long, deep breaths. Get comfortable in your chair or wherever you're standing, and notice the cool air coming in, filling your lungs, and the soothing warm air going out. Just let all your thoughts float away as you bring your attention to your breathing. You might mentally scan your body and notice if you're holding any tension in your muscles. And if you are, just gently let all that tension melt away with every exhale. Just bringing your attention to your breathing and letting yourself feel more and more comfortable sitting where you are. In your mind's eye, you see yourself descending down a long, narrow wooden stairway towards a beautiful, inviting beach. Your bare feet feel the rough, weathered steps, and with each step, you feel more and more tension gently melting away from your body. As you continue down the stairway, you notice how the bright white sand stretches down the shoreline as far as you can see. The ocean is a deep shade of blue with fine white crests of waves sweeping towards the shore. You reach the end of the stairway and step down, sinking into the warm, soothing sand. And as you feel the sand lightly between your toes, a soothing sensation of relaxation gently melts through your entire body. The roaring sound of the sea's surf, the waves crashing over each other, calms your mind and allows you to feel even more relaxed. You begin walking slowly towards the edge of the water and notice the warm sun on your face and shoulders. The salty smell of the sea air invigorates you, and you take in a deep breath and feel more relaxed and refreshed. Finally, you reach the water's edge and you gladly invite the waves to flow over your toes and ankles. You watch the waves glide smoothly towards you, gently sweeping around your feet, and the trails of seawater that flow slowly back out again. The cool water feels soft and comforting as you enjoy a few moments allowing yourself to gaze out on the far-reaching horizon. Overhead, you notice two seagulls gracefully soaring high above the ocean water, and you can hear their soft cries becoming faint as they fly away. And all of these sights, sounds, and sensations allow you to let go and relax more and more. After a moment, you begin strolling back down the beach at the water's edge. You feel a cool, gentle breeze pressing lightly against your back, and with every step, you feel yourself relaxing more and more. As you walk down the beach, you notice the details of sights and sounds around you, and soothing sensations of the sun, the breeze, and the sand below your feet. As you continue your leisurely walk down the beach, you notice a colorful beach chair resting in a nice, peaceful spot where the powdery, soft sand lies undisturbed. You approach this comfortable-looking beach chair, then you sit down, lie back, and settle in. You take in a long, deep breath, breathing slowly back out, and feel even more relaxed and comfortable resting in your chair. For a few moments more, let yourself enjoy the sights and sounds of this beautiful day on the beach, and when you feel ready, you can gently bring your attention back to the room, still letting yourself feel nice and comfortable sitting where you are. So if you were able to take a moment to really dive into that exercise, go ahead and come back, and we'll wrap up the webinar for today. This is a resource I wanted to be sure to share. It's called Mindfulness in Nature, and it provides nature-oriented exercising and some exercises, and some information about the theories that this book is based on. So this is an example where you can, something that you could expect from this book. And so it prompts you to stand in a place, orient towards the sun, and observe your environment with the eyes of a beginner. So you're utilizing some of those mindfulness skills to really be present and notice everything that your senses allow you to experience in that environment. This is another example from the book where you can explore your environment by focusing on opposite pairs. So noticing in your environment where you see light and where you see dark, or where you see sun or where you see shade, where things begin or where they end, things that are still or things that are moving. So these are some things, if after today you're interested in doing this might be a fun exercise to try. Some additional things to keep in mind are that our relationship to nature can sometimes incite anxiety. So if we're worried about the environment. So some research has shown that a number of Americans have felt helpless about certain things that are happening, or that there are theories about certain things that are happening in the environment. So people feeling anxious about extreme weather events, or feeling anxious about climate. Our own cultural relationships to nature can influence this as well. If we feel that we're losing access to parts of nature that were important for us or for our ancestors. And some of these fears or anxieties can feel rational, but it can also be debilitating from day to day, and can increase the amount of stress that we experience. Pollution can also be a stressor. So pollution in the air, soil, water, light pollution, or noise pollution can affect how you feel and what your day-to-day life is like. Where you live and what work you do can also significantly shape these experiences. So if you live in a place that has a lot of noise pollution, maybe it affects your sleep. The same could be said for light pollution. If it's harder for you to sleep in an environment with a lot of light, it can be stressful to not know if your water is safe to drink, or if there are things in the soil that you don't want to be exposed to. What can help with these? Anxiety or stressors related to your relationship to the environment or things happening in the environment. So sharing your feelings with someone you trust, taking really good care of yourself by protecting time to relax and manage stress, cultivating community and social support. So investing in close relationships with people where you can really be yourself, cultivating hobbies, making sure that you protect time each day to do something pleasurable or enjoyable for you. Being involved in efforts that feel meaningful or impactful. So volunteering with an organization that is maybe related to some of your concerns. So, working to volunteer in an animal shelter or maybe in a sustainability organization or something that you think would benefit your community, while also being sensitive to burnout, and not having unrealistic expectations of yourself. And then, of course, reaching out for mental health support if it begins to feel overwhelming. So getting to the end here and wrapping up. So resources, that Mindfulness in Nature book that I shared. These are some additional websites. So ParkRx is the one that I showed at the beginning, where you can find local areas to be outside. All Trails and TrailLink are resources that you can use if you don't know where to go to be outside. Let's say you moved somewhere new, or maybe being outside wasn't really your thing before, but you want to try it. These are some resources to help you find some places to go. And if you're interested in being outside, maybe like you want to go camping or you want to go hiking, but it's expensive to buy gear, which is understandable. It can be super expensive. Gear Trade is a resource that you can use to find used outdoor equipment or gear. All right, I'm going to shift to Q&A here. And it looks like no questions. So I must have done a really good job explaining. Well, we're here at the Counseling Center. If anything does come up, if you have any questions, thank you so much for being here today. I hope this information was helpful or informative or maybe interesting or thought-provoking for you. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day and a great weekend. All right, bye-bye.